down.
Right. Will you please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, good morning. It is January 30th, 2020. This is the Broadwater County Commissioners Business Meeting. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. This is where we take care of the business for the 6,000 citizens of Broadwater County. This meeting is open to the public and we welcome anyone to participate by promoting basic civility. Documents are available for review and copying prior to the meeting in the clerk and recorder's office, and they're in this notebook. These meetings are recorded. They're on YouTube and the county website. These are the only videos of these meetings that are unedited and uncut. We follow Robert's Rules of Order and county civility and open meeting policies. Under Robert's Rules of Order, all comments shall be directed to the board chair. Sideline conversations are welcome, but shall be taken out into the hall. For public comment, please come up to the podium, which is right over here. State your full name before each of your comments because the folks watching on video don't know who's talking. For those at the podium, just wait to be recognized by the board chair, and each person will be granted an initial 3 minutes to speak. And as far as the presentation, I assume you're going to be the presenter. The way we're doing it is come up to the podium, give your presentation. The commission will ask questions. When you're done, we'll ask you to sit, and that way any public comment can go up to the podium, give comment. When they're done, we'll ask you if you want to give a closing statement, and then we will move in second, and there will be another opportunity for public comment at that point before we have the final vote. So with that, we do have public comment on any subject not on the agenda that the commission has jurisdiction over. Is there any previous or any initial public comment? Public comment? Public comment. All right. We will get into it. We have at 10 o'clock a letter to Billings Clinic regarding acknowledgement of responsibility under MCA for Brownfield, Department of Environmental Quality and Petroleum Board processes, and good actor status. So Corey, the floor is yours.
So I'm going to give you each a little packet of documents.
Thank you.
I'm Corey Swanson, Broadwater County Attorney, and what I've given you, and I've given a bunch of the audience here, is a packet of just some relevant documents. The current state of things is we're still trying to work this out. I was working late with Brian over yesterday, and then with the attorneys for Broadwater Health Center. And there's, I guess where we are right now is the Broadwater Health Center, actually Billings Clinic, requested an environmental analysis, a phase 1 and then a phase 2, to determine if there was any petroleum contamination on the site that they want to purchase, which is the hospital and the real property. And they located some. So what that triggered is the question of, well, how is that going to be remediated? And what they're requesting then is some kind of assurance from Broadwater County that that remediation would happen either pursuant to the county's subgrant recipient process for the brownfields cleanup of the property, both the piece that the county owns as well as the piece that the hospital district owns, or some other assurance that the county is going to be responsible for it. So the draft that we've had 2 draft letters going back and forth, and the draft letter first done by the first set of lawyers was, I felt, adequate in that it basically said that pursuant to the way that we've received, they're eligible for this sub-grant to clean up this property. That includes not just the properties where the contamination existed, but if it attenuated to a nearby property, okay? The clinic lawyers wanted more than that, so they proposed this very sweeping paragraph indemnifying Billings Clinic for basically all possible claims. That's really concerning, because to do that, for the county to agree to that, we don't know what we're actually agreeing to. I mean, that could be literally 3 years from now, some patient could sue the hospital for something and claim that there was, petroleum fumes or whatever in their room, and Broadwater County we're not in control of the hospital. We haven't run it in the past. It's been, owned by the district but run by THC, and also, or I guess THS. But also in 3 years, we're not going to be in control of the hospital. So I wrote back and said, look, that indemnification clause is unnecessary. What we are proposing is an assurance letter that explains the current status of our eligibility for the sub-grant for cleaning up the contamination on the two properties, one owned by the county and the other owned by the hospital district that we keep calling the ambulance building. And the two properties are adjacent to each other. And under the statute and under the terms of the program, if contamination has attenuated to another location by another property, there's two ways to deal with that. The first is that the owner of that property, if they've done due diligence in acquiring that property and have identified that contamination, and depending on their status, they're eligible to receive that grant. Billings Clinic has done the environmental analysis, and their status as a nonprofit makes them eligible to receive a brownfields grant to do that cleanup. Okay, so that's the first item, the first option. Under that option, Brian Obert is today working through the Development Corporation, the Snowy Mountain, and through Montana DEQ to try and obtain a letter from the US EPA in Denver confirming that. So then Billings Clinic would have that assurance that because of the due diligence they've already done prior to sale and their status as a nonprofit, that they're eligible to receive a grant for that remediation. The second option is that if for some reason that was not adequate or they were ineligible, then the county, not under its existing grant, because we don't currently yet have a work plan for the cleanup of this third site that we've identified, but the county would be able to apply for a grant to do that follow-on cleanup. And by the way, it's not, Brian said that they just even this week, did some additional digging. It's not out of the realm of foreseeability that the county's gonna have to do that anyway, based on potentially some petroleum underground stuff on the corner lot by Doc Campbell's place. So we may be doing a follow-on grant anyway, no matter what, okay? Those are the two options under which we believe the Billings Clinic's any concern about cleanup is covered. We're preparing a letter along that way. I just got some of these documents last night and some others this morning, and I had a court hearing at 9, so I wasn't able to complete this. But if you look at the packet before you, the first one should look familiar. The top page is the November 15th, 2019 letter. So this is the Petroleum Tank Release Compensation Board notifying the commission that we're eligible for this grant for this property, okay? The second document, and it says draft only, not for release, and this is draft only, okay? And this is likely going to change, in fact. But this is a just an answer to a couple of the questions that Hugh Van Swearden had about the third document. And the third document is a multi-page document, 7 pages, and that's the sub-grant agreement, Brownfields Cleanup Revolving Loan Fund. So what this packet, combined with the EPA letter, which we are working on, will provide to, we believe, to the county, the hospital district, and Billings Clinic, is the assurance that this cleanup from the Grover Exxon to its subsequent locations will be covered by the grants. Here's my concern, and here's what I need from both the hospital district folks as well as the commission, is feedback on how we could proceed on this, because there's a couple different ways. And we don't have, without this information, there's a little bit of it is still pending, but secondly, without some guidance right now, we can't finalize this. I'm afraid we're not gonna be able to finalize the letter today. But here's the issue. The current grant application is for the hospital district board, okay? The primary property that is affected that needs to be cleaned up is the property of the ambulance building. The property adjacent to it is the county's property, which also needs to be covered, okay?
Which piece is that, Corey? You talking about the little lot?
The parking lot.
The parking
Yeah.
lot, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And are you saying there needs to be another grant for that?
Well, no, so Brian and I talked about this, and he said we can actually do the application so that both entities are covered. One needs to be designated as lead, and then the second one would also be covered, because they're both public entities, they're adjacent, and we're both entities are eligible for the grant, okay? The third issue, though, is that this other property, if we're talking specifically about the hospital property, is currently owned by the hospital district. It doesn't make sense to me that Billings Clinic is asking for an assurance from Broadwater County when the property is owned and has been owned by the hospital district, and the hospital district is eligible for the grant as well. However, they're showing a preference that they get an assurance letter from the county, not the hospital district, that says we're going to cover all these funds. So I don't have their feedback yet on how to resolve that issue. So there's two ways to resolve it. One is we just designate the hospital district as the lead recipient, sub-grant recipient, the county as a secondary, okay? And then the assurance letter provided to Billings Clinic is from the hospital district under this grant, okay? The second way to do it would be if we've talked about this option of transferring the ambulance building to the county. If that were done contemporaneously with it, then the county would be the lead agency receiving the grant, the hospital district would be covered as well. But now basically both those two properties that need to be cleaned up are in the county's arena, and the county then as the lead on the grant could provide that assurance to Billings Clinic. So we've got to work that out. But in either way, I wouldn't recommend to the hospital district or to the Billings Clinic, or to the county, that you do a blanket indemnification paragraph, because to do that would require us to, literally, I mean, they did very thorough due diligence before the purchase. We don't want to put this thing on hold for 3 more months to do that much more due diligence. And I don't think it's necessary. So, with the assurance of what we would provide through our letter, through the proof that we have this grant, as well as through the EPA letter, assuring them that they have the eligibility to receive the grant, we believe is going to, I mean, it would cover them. I think it would satisfy Billings Clinic. The Chicago lawyers are another group that I'm still working on. So that's basically the state of things, and most of this movement's happened in the last about 12, 14 hours. So last night and this morning. What I could do then is do a draft letter, whether it's from the county or from the hospital district, or it could be both. We could have both sign it, that'd be fine. Saying the following. 1, we are eligible for receiving a grant. Not only eligible, I mean, we are in the process. We're, for the remediation of the 2 lots that are adjacent to each other. And under the law, contamination that's attenuated or migrated from those original sites, we would also be able to apply for a subsequent grant to do that cleanup once we do a work plan. Unless the owner of the property would also be covered. And in this case, you would be covered because you've met the all appropriate inquiry standard of federal law through your phase 1 and phase 2 environmental analysis. And we're expecting a letter of confirmation from USD or EPA. And we could do it in such a manner that if for some reason that was denied, that the county could apply for that grant. We'd have to do a work plan first. And then here's where it gets sticky, right? The hospital's gonna be operating a hospital. We would have to work with them to ensure that in the process of doing a work plan, doing cleanup, we're not disrupting their operations unduly.
With this letter, I think it's important to state how much money is available, what's
Yep.
been done in the history. When you say we could apply for a grant, that implies we may or may not get the grant. What we have documented is a guarantee of up to $1.4 million,
Correct.
which we know only 4 projects in the state of Montana out of 4,000 and some projects came close to the top, which was 1 million. We're just a small little gas station here. The other projects were, that got up to that 1 million, were a Cascade County yard that was right by a refinery with multiple tanks, and it was a commingled release. The Stimson Mill in Bonner, which was huge, with both tanks, 200 acres. Commercial fuel station in Butte that was on bedrocks that required a very unique dig out, and then the bulk site. So I would like that included in the grant. And maybe in replace of, we could apply for a grant. That just is a little bit too arbitrary, I think,
Yeah, I
for the
think
facts
that's,
we have on the ground.
I think that's absolutely right. And so I've worked with Brian on those numbers, and I would probably want him to help me nail those down. The letter that we have here indicates that even on a going forward basis, not just the work that's been done, there is an additional $982,000 available, of which we wouldn't have to pay any. It would be 100% reimbursed. So,
And if we exceed that, there's the $400,000 that we've already been told we are eligible for because of our good standing. So that gets added to the package, and they should know that.
So I'm not sure if I've done a good job of framing kind of what I think we need to decide today. Here's what I would ask for you to let me know is the letter to Billings Clinic, does it make sense to do that from both the county commission and the hospital district, number one, or do we pick one or the other? And then secondly, on the sub-grant, at this point, it's written to the hospital district because the ambulance building is the primary one. But I would recommend we have that changed so that both county and hospital district are recipients through this agreement, and then we just designate which one is lead. And I don't know, I maybe see what the
It
officers.
doesn't matter to me, and I don't think it matters to our board. But I'm questioning, as I understand it, under Oak Street, that there's really no more migration of the petroleum product. What does Billings Clinic, they're not looking for us to clean that up, are they?
So they've gotten a phase 2 assessment done. I'll be honest with you, I mean, we get into that and I'm like, I need an engineer to decipher this, but they sent it to the Crowley Fleck lawyers, they sent it to Brian, and who's provided it to the Petroleum Board.
Sure.
And they're looking at it, and
I mean, we'd say, okay, we can dig up Oak Street and remediate it, it's below action level now. Is that gonna satisfy them? No, they want a guarantee of indemnification for down the road forever. Wouldn't matter if we cleaned it up or not, if we do any more work on it.
well, and that's a good point, because there is a remediation measure using fans and radon and stuff. It does take, you have to put together a work plan to do that, to kind of say, here's the level, this is the expectation of what it will accomplish, and then there's monitoring and it's monitored regularly.
And have we even seen, I have seen no report on how much pollution they found or what their quality is, or, I know they did a study, but we're not privy to that.
Well, I don't have it yet, but I can get it. I have the phase 1, but I don't have the phase 2. But I can get it and get it to you. It hasn't been withheld. It's simply a matter of, I said, find someone that knows contamination to explain this thing to me.
Well, in any case, we need to proceed with the cleanup of those 2 lots over there. We
Right.
have to do that. But I just recommend we go ahead and do that, one way or another. If we want both, a joint letter, it's fine with me. If you want this grant application, the sub-grant application to apply to both of us, that's fine, it doesn't matter.
I'm gonna sit down for a minute since
Yeah.
other people are talking.
Sure. And Vic, and then I'm gonna kind of hold tight to keeping a tight rein on our
Yeah.
meetings, just for my own practice. So if you would step up to the podium for your public comment, I'd appreciate it.
Sure.
Thanks.
My understanding, I think that we're kind of mixing some things here too. The sub-grant proposal from Snowy Mountain is basically to clean up the ambulance building. It's not for anything else, and it's for $100,000. My understanding is that the agreement that was signed 20 years ago, and the county is the responsible party for all, they own the property that was responsible for the release of the contaminant. So the cleanup, the petroleum board cleanup, the part that they're paying, they're paying for the cleanup. The sub-grant through Snowy Mountain is to monitor the cleanup. You have to have a designated qualified engineer thing, and for demolition of the building. Demolition of the building is the responsibility of the hospital district to take care of, and we're working with Snowy Mountain. The rest of all that is not tied up with the sub-grant and the ambulance building. It comes back to the fact that the release was from the old Grover site bulk facility. And so, the cleanup, if any cleanup has to be done, and I agree there's no definitive answer to what has to be done outside of the ambulance building site, really doesn't involve the sub-grant that we're doing. That's back to the petroleum board and the qualified responsible party, which is the county, because the county owns where the release happened from. So I think we're kind of getting a lot of things mixed up here. I think the finalizing the sub-grant with Snowy Mountain so we can move forward with the cleanup of the hospital district property is certainly is what we're working on. One thing, the indemnification that the Billings Clinic attorneys are asking for has to do with the hospital building, and it is still owned by the district, but it's not in any way involved with the sub-grant agreement with Snowy Mountain, nor would any cleanup over at the corner by Doc Campbell's building be involved the hospital district. That's the release that's covered by the petroleum board and ultimately the county as the responsible party. So I think we're kind of mashing up two issues that need to be separated. The cleanup of the ambulance building site, and then any other cleanup that has to be done separate from that, because the sub-grant is just for that one cleanup spot.
Thanks, Vic. Anybody else have any input? All right. So, any comments from either of you guys? Nope.
I guess one question I have is was there an air quality issue in the hospital?
Yes,
There was.
And how was it found?
they did an air quality test. They put these steel.
No, before they
spheres-
drilled into the concrete.
Oh, before? I don't know, it's just recently it was discovered, so.
So that's my question. Why was there ever an issue of air quality in the hospital prior to this?
I don't think it's ever been tested.
Yeah,
This is
we
the first
didn't
time
know.
it's been tested.
It was part of the phase 2 environmental study.
So they tested the air quality within the hospital,
And under.
but I want to separate under. So there was an air quality issue prior, and that's what triggered the rest of this, is?
Or it was just discovered during this. This is the first time we've seen any air quality test that I know of. I don't know if the hospital's ever done an air quality test. There's never been a reason to.
It's my understanding that this recent test was, done by Tetra Tech at the request of the hospital, or Billings Clinic,
Correct.
right? Where they drilled underneath and found, well, we don't know what this report says, nobody knows. But my question still goes back to prior to that. Okay, nobody
No.
knows.
I think they did, I think they just requested the study because of the proximity of other properties that were concerned. It makes sense to do it.
Is that, their text said they do it about 50% of property transfers. Part of the standard second phase.
Now, apparently, somebody has seen this report, and what was responded with this report is that those air quality tests are within EPA standards, which does not trigger a need for a cleanup based on that part of the finding.
That's what I hear too. I haven't actually seen anything saying that or seen the reports myself. But
I haven't either, it's just what I'm hearing.
Yeah, me too.
So we need to see the report, for sure. If it is within standards, then it is within standards,
Right.
period. So, the other question I would have, and I don't know if this piggybacks off what you were saying, Daryl, but if there wasn't a air quality test done prior to drilling through the concrete,
Right.
how do we know that it was because of drilling through the concrete and anything?
That's exactly where I'm going.
That's what I thought you were saying.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going.
Yeah.
And I know in talking, in some of the research I did for this, that was a concern from another engineer, was don't disturb it,
I heard the same,
so.
yeah. So the question would be then at this point, I guess I have three and two of them are to answer your questions. A letter to Billings Clinic, in my opinion, if it's good with you guys, it seems to me it's stronger to come from a team. So the larger the team, the hospital district board and the commission. We are already on the hook from 2003 and we have the proof right in front of us. So for us to take lead seems to be a pretty easy step. If your board would be agreeable, it seems to me we have a pretty strong, united team involved in this. And then the other one is, I think the subgrant question, you're absolutely right, it is a separate issue. I think we need to stick to what has the petroleum board done, what has EPA done, and what is available to us as a next step from brownfield. And that's the 400,000. What guarantees do we have? We have a number of letters with the guarantee. Let's provide that to the attorneys. And then my third question would be, when can we get this done? We have a meeting Monday. We could post another amendment to that agenda so that we could take care of this on Monday if you think we could have a letter at that time.
I can
So
do,
those are
I
my
can do
questions.
that, I can do that, yeah, I think basically, and I've said all along, I mean, I deal with a lot of things and I consider myself expert in some things, this is not it at all. So I just this morning finally got the DEQ lawyer's contact to follow up with him and see if he can kind of push us along this way. But I think if I can just have access to a very clear delineation of those approvals, the money spent, et cetera, and most of that's going to come from Brian, I think I can easily have this thing done today and go to the other parties for review, and we just need to push this thing along. That's as far as the assurance letter. And then, I think, am I hearing you correctly that what you're saying is agreeing with Vic, that the sub-grant that is currently on the table is just hospital district board for cleanup of the ambulance building, and we should just have them proceed as is without adding the county in, since the county is already in the program from prior to? Is that what, how the county feels, county commission feels?
This sub-grant agreement is just for that property.
Correct. Yeah.
And we've already
That's
signed a
correct.
contract, so we could be either way. It's 6 of one, half dozen of the other, I think, but I'm happy
Okay.
to defer to you guys if you have a preference.
So if that's what you guys wanna do, we can get that signed as soon as you're happy with it. And then we could officially have this done end of the day Monday, and I understand they're gonna do the membership substitution tomorrow, is that correct?
I think they were shooting for that, but I think there's gotta be some discussion on what that looks like, cause part of that was paying off the warrants. I can't imagine they're gonna pay off the warrants if they don't get the property.
Right.
So I'm not, yeah, I'll have to follow up and find out.
Okay, the latest position I heard from them is if they can, they'll do the member substitution tomorrow, and then if the closing is delayed significantly, then we'll need to redo the lease agreement. But if it's Monday that we do this and they can close sometime next week, we probably don't need to redo the lease agreement, and pay off the warrants and be done. So,
So would you wanna maybe add this like 4 o'clock Monday afternoon?
that would be great.
Would that work? Would that
Yeah.
work for you guys?
Works for me, sure.
How are you guys with that? Does that give you time to, I know you
Well,
have
we can't
authority
really
to move
speak for the
forward.
board, and the board has taken no action on it. I mean, I think they'd go along with it.
Didn't they give you authority to move forward, or that was just with the sub-grant, that was different? Yeah, okay. Would you wanna try and meet with them Monday morning? What do you think?
Sure, I think we need to move forward as quickly as we can.
Yeah.
On our side to get this moving forward. So if we can get, if that fits in the notice period.
We have to have 48 hours, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
You wanna just do it at 4 with them on Monday? Do you wanna do a joint
Pardon?
meeting? Do you wanna do a joint meeting Monday afternoon?
That'd be all right.
Oh, that's a good idea. So 4 o'clock, Monday,
Sure.
we'll post it separate as a joint meeting, and we can handle that for you guys if you want, just do it on one.
Just do it on one, that'd be fine.
Okay.
Sure.
Yeah, we can get that done
We'll just
today.
notify the board members this afternoon, this morning.
All right,
4 PM here.
sounds good. Could we have a draft of the letter, do you think, before, so that we can
Yes.
also weigh in on
Yes.
those particulars? And Terry Wadsworth, I think any further technical stuff, we need to include him. He is with the petroleum board, kind of the head brains behind the outfit, I think. I don't know his qualifications, but
I'll find it,
Is there any reason we couldn't proceed with cleanup of the ambulance building under the sub-grant, this agreement, and then just do separately anything further?
I think that's where this is gonna end up shaking
I
out.
think so
Yeah.
too.
do you want that covered in that joint meeting? You guys
We
signing the
can, yeah,
contract?
we sure talk about it.
Okay. All right, I'll include that. Then you can always postpone if you have to, but at least it'll be on the agenda if you need it. All right, so we all have our walking papers. Does anybody have any questions? I guess, first of all, do you guys have any questions?
No.
Okay, Corey, any questions?
Do
Need for
you
clarification?
all want if I get the phase 1 and phase 2 reports, can I just send them by email to?
Sure.
Okay.
Please. All right, anybody else, any questions, ideas for support, brilliance you care to share? All right,
No, my position's a little different. I just want to sign that membership
You'd almost hope they
substitution
did
agreement.
help clean up
So
Right.
as long as Billings is willing to do that,
And
then
that
we're
would
good.
fill out their backfill
Yeah.
and be able to clean
we're
up.
doing
They
everything
have a
we can.
reason for wanting to
Foundation,
get
and if you-
done in
Seems
January.
like this is,
Oh, okay,
every time we think we're there.
David back to January 1st.
Okay,
Because that's when the report is.
I'll give you one.
Yes.
yeah,
You heard today that Johnson Controls.
Or they
I have a question for you.
okay.
Or
But once they get outside of
We,
January.
we have been doing a
Just
It's
bingo.
gonna be outside of January, yeah.
I gotta go to my dentist.
Not quite
Okay.
every
Guys, we're gonna what are we doing? We're adjourning. Thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
And it's,
Good luck.
I just gotta go across the street, so I'm good to go.
Thanks you guys for coming. Thanks for your work.